Hey folks, Dirk Bentley here. If you've seen one of my concerts, you know I'm all about energy. Performing, recording, traveling, being a husband and a father, it's a busy life, and I need to be 100% every day. So when my battery starts running low, I grab a sugar-free, vitamin-packed 5-hour energy shot. It tastes great, and it gets me back to 100% fast. Try it. It could work for your busy life too. For more information, visit 5hourenergy.com.
I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. Ooh, I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristen Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years, and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me, and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all, we promised we'd be cordial.
Hey everyone, this is Kristen Sunanta Walker with Mental Health News Radio. I'm here with one of our favorite guests, Tom Dahlborg. Hey Tom, how are you doing this morning?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I just finished. Is the book that you wrote about your son, is that actually published yet, or did I get the pre-published copy?
You got the pre-published copy. I had written a blog series, and there was a lot of folks who had read it and said, you need to publish this, especially with all the bullying out in the ethers now, and so much adverse impact from bullying that they wanted the message out there. So I decided to compile the blog series and turn it into a book, and I'm going to be self-publishing it shortly.
Wow, it was so good. I told you just before we went on the air that I read the last chapter when I woke up this morning. I woke up in such a good mood. I've been reading it. I've been, taking it drip by drip all week, and I had started on the weekend when I was moving, and I saved the last chapter. It was so touching. But before we go any further, just so our listeners know, tell them a little bit about your background and what you do.
Sure, I'm happy to. So my name is Tom Dahlborg. I have been working in healthcare for well over 30 years. I am a husband and a father of 3. My oldest daughter is a former Miss Maine USA who experienced her own bullying, was bullied, and in fact, we were just talking about this yesterday, has been receiving or been bullied as of late. She's 23, 24 years old, and she's being bullied through social media. I mean, that's just a whole other addition to the avenues that people will use to bully other people. But she's just amazing. I have a son who, the big kid in basketball, the book we're talking about, is about part of his journey because he's so much more than what I've shared there. And I have my youngest daughter, Haley, who is a top 10 finisher in the Miss Maine Teen USA and a history buff and a freshman in college. So that's more on the personal side. I also have, as Kristen, a pup that we all absolutely adore.
Everybody in America loves this dog.
So you'll see him on social media as well. And, but yeah, that's from the family side. From the professional side, I've been a student group coach. Student group is an organization that really works with healthcare systems in America and Canada and in Australia to improve patient safety, to improve clinical and quality outcomes, to improve patient experience, and does so with both heart and mind, which is one of the reasons that I'm working with Student Group. As I mentioned, I've been working in healthcare for well over 30 years. I was the CFO for the National Institute for Children's Health Quality, the executive director for the Hygeia Foundation, which is a nonprofit research institute focused on quality improvement, research, of course, and innovation in healthcare, and really focused on bringing relationship, compassion, empathy, and trust back into healing. I believe from my soul in servant leadership, and that is the true way to lead and change this world. And I am just so excited to be talking with you again. It's been quite some time.
I know. And just so everyone knows, when Tom travels, people sometimes in the Midwest, think that you're Australian?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And since we all know Sam Webb so well from Livid, and he's from Australia, we figure it's the accent on the A that is the thing, but Tom actually lives up in Maine. So this is a Maine accent.
Exactly. I actually grew up just south of Boston, so I think I've been living in Maine since. Yeah. That's exactly right. Been living in Maine since '99, so I think it's a combination. So that maybe confuses people a little bit. It's interesting, Kristen. When I was going through what we call speaker training with student groups, because we do a lot of speaking at conferences and so forth, my speaker coach, was like, "Okay, Tom, I don't want you to change your accent, but what you need to do every time you get in front of a large audience is you need to clear it." And what he meant by that is I need to basically either simply say I'm from the Boston area or from the Northeast, so people stop struggling with what is he saying and how is he saying and where's he from, and just get it out there. It was interesting. I was chairing the World Congress Patient Engagement Summit a few years ago, and Kristen, I thought it was going really well until I see this fellow in the front of the audience, and he puts his hands up to his mouth, and he says very lightly, very softly to me while I'm up on the stage near the podium, he says, "What the heck is marketing?" and that's when I knew I needed to start to either pronounce Oz for the rest of the day or at least say I'm from Boston.
I love it. What's marketing? I'm going to get my khakis, wearing my khakis.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I know I always say, I talk to so many people all over the world, and I always go, I love accents. You love things that are different than what you sound. And they always tease me, especially my friend Gopi in India. He's like, "You're the one with the accent, Kristen." Like, yes, this is true. This is true.
Oh my gosh.
Southern California. Awesome. Like totally for sure. That's what I get to if I've had too much wine. Yeah.
In a similar vein, my bride and I, we went to an Irish festival some years ago in northern Maine, and we're there and we're watching all these Irish bands, and there was one, I'm going to draw a blank on the name of the band, but it's an all-women's band from Donegal, and they were brilliant. And so we wanted to go up and get a CD, and of course they're signing them and so forth. And they asked where we were from, and we said, and one of the singers with this great Irish accent looked up at me and she goes, "I love your accent."
In her accent.
I'm like, no, Jaws.
Oh, that's awesome. Let me ask you something, because we've known each other for a while. I don't remember how it was through social media or something. I know it was online that we bumped into each other and then became friends. But what is it about you that always says "my bride"? Because I love it. It's so endearing, but you always say that. And I think you're the only man that I know that says "my bride."
That's really a great question.
I told you I was going to throw some doozies out at you, but I didn't pre-prepare. That just came to my head.
That was really good. I'd have to say that. So my bride and I, met back in 1990, and every day that we wake up and we're together, it's just like the world is starting all over, and we're just totally in the present, and of course we're thinking about the future. But as we're thinking about the future, we're living in the present, and it's just like it's all renewed. Our wedding and our vows and our love is renewed every time we wake up together. And I think that's where it comes from. It's just maybe not a reminder, but just stating that fact, because it just feels like it's anew every morning.
That's so amazing. I remember I had posted something. And I've been single for a while, as everybody knows, but very close with the only man that I married. And I posted something. I don't know. It was a woe is me post on Facebook. And you wrote, "You just need someone that helps push the guacamole onto your chip." And I was like, oh my God, that is so sweet. And I was like, okay, that'll stop me from martyring myself for the rest of the day. Oh man. So that is so, I love it. So I know that we connected, I know where we connected was when I was living at a friend's house in Atlanta a few years ago. Cause I remember where I was sitting when we had our first conversation, and we were talking about narcissistic personality disorder, narcissism, healthcare. I mean, it was a wide range of topics. Those two things weren't intertwined. And then we started talking about bullying, and we just connected that way. And I read the book that I've read both of your books, and I read the book that you wrote about your son that's getting ready to be published. And I want to say this to our listeners. The first part of it that you read, I immediately wanted to bind it myself, because I do have it in PDF and I could go get it bound. And I wanted to get like 50 copies and go to the stoop of every house in the neighborhood that you moved out of, at all those parents that bullied your kids. And then I thought, no, it's been years. That's not my battle. But that came up for me. So what do you think about that? Other than Kristen needs psychiatric help. What do you think about that?
It was interesting to me as we were going through that journey together. And I was also, during that time, I ended up taking a job with, as I mentioned, the National Institute for Children's Health Quality. And when I was there, I learned so much because, for example, when my son was being bullied by adults, so by parents of other children and by coaches, I thought it was an aberration. I thought we were all alone in this.
Right.
I didn't know where to turn. My wife and I didn't know where to turn. We looked towards ourselves. We looked towards our child, of course. And my parents came up, and we without us saying anything, when my wife and I were both off or out, my parents brought my son up to the bus stop in that neighborhood, and they saw it. My parents saw this, and they felt it, and they saw what they were doing to my child. And in fact, my wife and I were just down Cape Cod with my parents this past weekend, and my father brought it up out of the blue, and he says, I still feel so bad that I didn't do something, that I couldn't do more, or that I didn't do more. And we had this really intense conversation about that. So he felt just like you did, all these people need to know. They need to see what Tommy, my son, is like now. I mean, he was a beautiful, wonderful child then, and what he's become, because so many children who are bullied become bullies over time. Unfortunately, it almost
or they
recreates
or get
itself.
addicted, become addicts, or all kinds of horrible
Absolutely.
things. There's like the road to anything wonderful is definitely paved with stones when that happens as a child.
Absolutely, you're so spot on. And then at the National Institute for Children's Health Quality, I learned from these brilliant people that bullying of children by adults is not an aberration. No. And in fact, I ended up writing a number of posts for that organization about bullying and if I remember right, it's like 40 to 70%. I know that's wide, but I believe it's in there of children are bullied by coaches.
Yes.
And same thing with adults. And it's just like, so as I was writing this story, which is, yes, about the bullying and about my son and how he overcame and how he's so amazing now, it also is about me learning and growing and becoming a better person through my learnings from him, and also through learnings of but of what's happening out there. And then, as I mentioned, recall from others to get this information out there. Let people know that they aren't alone, that this is happening. If they don't realize it, open their eyes maybe a little bit more just to make sure. And if they do realize it, there's places to go and there's help. And there's my family, of course, that we're here for folks too.
Yeah, that's the amazing part, is letting people know that they're not alone. Because as a parent, I mean, it's awful when you're a kid. And I definitely, had my own things with bullying, and I hung around a big bully for a while. And I knew what was going on at her house and how she was being bullied by her mom. And unfortunately, there was some not so hot stuff going on with her dad. So I felt like I saw both sides of it, because a lot of people loved this young woman and a lot of people absolutely hated her because she bullied them. But I walked home with her every day and I saw, her mother was horrifying to her. The stuff that she would say to her was just the most degrading, because she was a little bit overweight. Oh, it was awful. And I remember thinking as a kid, this is like 8th grade, understanding where her anger came from. I was like, well, she learned it and she's upset, and, and she, that was a pattern her entire life. She became a manager, and she actually was a manager of me for a while, and she was still kind of a bully then. And of course, as an adult, I was like, I'm out. But it just shows you the pattern of how, that road can take people in different directions.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. And again, we're incredibly blessed, and we totally understand that. The term now is privilege. We totally understand that. Mm. And so even when, like my daughter, I mentioned, Samantha, is bullied, I go to that place of, okay, so where's that person coming from? There's no excuse for it, but also there is understanding. And
yeah.
And it's just, so when you were talking about how you would walk home with that young woman, I'm like, wow, that's so wonderful in so many ways, because you were probably that rock that she needed, or that support that she needed, that maybe that one person that could see through and could understand maybe what others couldn't understand, because they saw that facade, they saw that wall in the manifestation of the harm and the hurt that's been done to that young woman. I mean, just,
I knew
I knew
she was being molested. I knew she was suicidal. I mean, we made a pact when she was 16, I think, or maybe it was 15, and she was also gay. So that was, I'm 48, so you can imagine how accepted that was. And there was a neighbor that was messing around with her too, who was an adult, and I knew all this stuff that was going on, and she would call me, and we made this pact. Okay, you can't kill yourself until next Friday after we talk. Because there was there was nothing else. And I'm not saying I did some kind of great service. I'm not saying that at all. People have done that for me when I've been suicidal. But it was really, I didn't, she bullied me too. It wasn't like it wasn't painful to be friends with her. It was just, the only thing I can say, it was just interesting to see how that is born, I guess.
Absolutely. So God bless you for sticking in there with that young woman, and for creating that pact, and for that deal to help her get to the next week, get through the next minute, the next day, the next week, and so forth. I think that's amazing. Kudos to you.
So with your daughters, I mean, I don't want to put a label on them. So let's see, how do we do this? Because I was so objectified as a kid that I'm very, very, very careful about not objectifying others. So this is what I do with Melanie, because Melanie looks very much like what Western society sees as a supermodel. And I see how she gets treated because of it. And yes, there's admiration and so on, but there's also way more haterade, especially from women. So your daughters, they're in these beauty pageants and so on, and they're very, very Western society accepted beautiful. Everyone is beautiful. Mm-hmm. So let's just put that out there. Everyone, no matter what their size, their skin color, their whatever, sex, whatever. But they are that. And so I would imagine that the bullying is coming from jealousy.
It's interesting. I don't know if I can answer that, because I think we're all such complex adaptive systems that, each one of us, and there's so many different things and drivers and so forth. I think part of it is, my daughter's, pageant. So my daughter Samantha came home to my wife and I back in, I think it was 2013, and said, "Oh, I want to do a pageant." And my wife and I, my bride and I, we had no idea. We didn't know anything about pageants, and she had never done a pageant. And long story short, she wins that Miss Maine USA and then goes to the Miss USA. And we'd have to say 99% of the experience was incredible.
Right.
The supportive people, the loving people, the people that truly cared about not just the physical beauty, but about the story, about the heart that was coming.
Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, Sammy just sent me, my oldest daughter, Samantha, she just sent me some pictures from a recent modeling shoot she did. And my comment back to her was, "Your heart shines through," because it's that inner beauty that really comes through. And like you said, regardless of what our shape is or our color or anything else, it's that inner beauty, that love for ourselves and love for others that really shines through, and what we should be looking for always. And she still gets people who are, my daughter, like you said, she's a beautiful girl. People just started ripping on her just recently about her belly size. Right. And it's just, let me just say this. we're so blessed that my daughter has enough self-esteem that it won't bother her. And she'll just recognize it is what it is, and she'll block people if they need to be blocked. Sometimes she engages with people and tries to make a difference. And just like my son, as you read in the book, when he got a little bit older and a bully was bullying his friends, he stood up for his friends. Yeah, exactly. And then the next day went to the bully and made sure the bully was okay.
That was awesome. How on earth did you talk to him about doing that, or he just came up with that on his own?
He did that on his own. I wish I could say I was that good a parent. No, he did that on his own, and he told us he was almost saying it sheepishly too. My bride and I. He said, yeah. I won't say the names, but so and so. I'll make up names. John was being bullied, and so I hope you don't mind. I stood up for him, and then he said, oh, and by the way, when Mikey was bullying him, I saw him the next day, and I just went over to him. And I said, are you okay? And my bride and I were like, oh my gosh, thank God a fight didn't happen. Thank God no negative aspects went through. But we were so proud of him for doing that. And I'm not sure, Kristen, if you saw this recently, but this is a testament to my son. He's a wonderful boy, and he just graduated from college. He's doing brilliantly. And he's also has some challenges.
Yes,
and he just wrote this beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He wrote this beautiful blog post. He has his own blog, where he talks about going to see a psychiatrist because of his anxiety.
Good for him. Oh my God. The more young men that will talk about this openly, the better.
Exactly. And my wife and I'll be honest, at first we were like, oh no, you should go to, how's this going to harm my child?
Right.
To the place of, I'm so proud of you that regardless of what negative consequences could occur, you had the courage. You were courageously vulnerable enough to put that out there.
Right.
And then when we hear about the suicides as of late, especially
morning.
Exactly, Anthony Bourdain, I believe it was suicide, and like you just said, we don't talk about it enough. We are pushing it aside. There's a stigma around mental health, like it's not really an illness, and to have my son put it out there with this huge heart of his to say, I'm going through this too, and if you need help, let me know. And it's just amazing. And then one last point on this, his psychiatrist, who I've known for a long, long time, I've worked with him before, and he's awesome. To the point of, you were just talking about how when we're children, how it manifests when we're adults. His psychiatrist said to Tommy, one of the tools is, think about when that young child of yours that's still there, that needs some healing, and love your younger self. And I was just like, exactly.
My gosh. Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Love your younger self. Absolutely. That's really good. That hit me because when I was going through a hard time at the end of last year, Melanie said, girlfriend, you need to put every age you ever were to bed with you every single night in the most loving way possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
Exactly.
oh my God, I'm going to cry now.
Melanie is brilliant.
She is. She's like, I told her she's my little secret, not weapon, but like people underestimate her because she's quiet and she's Southern and she's polite, that polite Southern lady, and they have no idea who they're dealing with. They really don't.
That's awesome.
I know, no one likes commercials, but seriously, folks, without the help from these organizations, we could not stay on the air. Please give a shout out to zencharts.com. If you're a mental health or addiction treatment center, you'll want to use their EHR. It's gorgeous, and they're just good people. And also MyGenetics, MyGenetx.com, because knowing your genetic code empowers your mental health treatment. And lastly, CopeNotes.com. We love getting positive messages right to our phones every day from Johnny Crowder. He's the lead singer of Prison, a heavy metal band sharing their music about suicide prevention, addiction recovery, and mental health. See, that was painless. Support them as they support us. Back to the show.
Let's switch gears into the healthcare world. You were on the business side of things, but you write so much about empathy and about how vulnerability and empathy are what's needed in healthcare. And the other book of yours that I read, I wrote you a review for. I was like, I know people talk about this, but the way that you talk about it, I know a lot of people, I've never read anything that sounds like the way you talk about it.
That's, well, thank you. I can't answer a why about that. I can say, though, that in that other book, it's about my journey through healthcare, both as a patient and as a healthcare leader, and being able to see the flames of goodness within the healthcare system and also the opportunities we have to improve it, and to be able to live after being told, hey, you'll never work again, get in line for a heart transplant and all these other things, but to be able to live because of how caring or health caring doctors and nurses and transport aides and lab techs and these people throughout the system, a lot of unsung heroes, because they connect with you, with all their patients, not just me, at a whole different level, and to feel the impact of that connection just in and of itself on my own healing. And then to be blessed to go to the Hygeia Foundation and meet other people that believe in the power of empathy. I mean, Helen Rice out of Harvard, there's research that shows this is all true. And now there's people that are writing about compassionomics, which is about the impact of compassion alone on healing and on outcomes. I've just been blessed to be able to have all these different lenses to look through, and then to look into my own heart and to be able to share it in a number of forums. So I don't know other than to say thank you. I'm not sure how else to respond to your comment.
Well, it's so funny to me because I live in this world. Thank God I live in this world with all of these compassionate men like you. And I didn't grow up with that at all. Like if somebody told me that I would have more male friends than female friends later in life, I would have been like, did I die and come back? That is not even possible. How, and so I was on a great show that's on Apple TV and on many other places called America Trends with a wonderful host named Amy Fuller. And they had me come in and do like 8-minute segments. And she asked me, one of the segments was on where do we find sensitive and compassionate men, because we just can't find them. We can't find them. We can't find them. And I was thinking, well, yes, you can. Like, they're everywhere. And I had to step back and go, oh, I remember thinking that. I remember in being in general society and seeing, magazines talking about, this. And so I realized, oh, okay, right. This is still that question going on. I'm just in a field where there are a lot of them. So I just blurted out without even thinking, well, you can find them on my network. There's a whole slew of them there. They will cry. They will sit and hold your hand. They will tell you their feelings. They will be transparent. They will be empathic. They will be passionate and compassionate. And they kind of looked at me funny, and I'm like, I'm not kidding. Like, look at all the shows. A lot of those are men. It's great.
You have an amazing lineup. And I think that is the light that shines through you that attracts the type of people that are living from both a heart and a mind place, that are incredibly brilliant, emotionally intelligent, and can connect at both of those places. And I think kudos to you.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, we're privileged also. And I know you don't mean it this way, and I don't either, in terms of everybody certainly has a privilege of one kind or another. And I don't mean it in the sense that maybe a lot of society thinks of the word privilege. I mean privilege from such the humble place where you realize how many blessings you have in life, especially when you've struggled with depression, and suicidal ideation and all that. When you walk through that journey multiple times throughout your life, and then you get to those also very happy places. My God, I know for me, I eat them alive. Like, oh, I'm so happy right now. I'm so privileged. My every life is so great, because when that depression comes, I don't feel like that at all. So yeah, it's a good place to live. It makes the depression not as deep or as long if I stuff myself with gratitude, the times that I'm not,
Absolutely. I love how you use the term blessing, because that's the term I always use, is we're blessed. It's a blessing and so forth. And I know a lot of the nomenclature nowadays is privilege. And so I love the way you just articulated that, explained it. But yes, I'm totally with you. It's about, there are just so many blessings out there. We're all so blessed. I'll give you an example too. My son has this amazing girlfriend. She loves being of service, and she does a lot of her service in Haiti. And she had shared with us recently how blessed these people in Haiti are, because they have family, they have faith, and they have love. And I think about that, and they don't have a lot of other, quote, privileges. And I think about that, and I think about the USA and elsewhere, and it's like, how often do we all say it's all about love, it's all about family, it's all about faith, or at least 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3. It's about those things. So these people in Haiti are so blessed with the 3 things that mean so much, that when we are on our deathbed and we say, oh, when I think back on my life, I think about the love I shared and those types of things. They are so incredibly blessed. And they need support and help and economic. And yes, true. It's both and. And so I just love how you said that. It's about the blessings. And we need to, and you also said gratitude. And so one of the things I write with many of my posts on LinkedIn is an example is lead, serve, love, always, and be grateful. And I think if for me, that helps me when things are tough and stress, and there's whatever it may be, when I circle back to stop looking within, but start to look outside of myself and focus on those things, leading, serving, loving, and being grateful. That's how I reconnect with my own blessings, and then can be more of service to others. And like I said, that helps me.
It's an interesting life to really have that want to be your life. And I found it really interesting because I was a very successful consultant, and I'd built up somewhat of a reputation in behavioral health around EHRs. Some of it probably wasn't good because I would call them out when they were really bad EHRs. And I don't care if I got a reputation for that. That was the point. It was always like, would you want to put your grandma's mental health records in that system? Yeah, then we don't want to use it. When I was very successful in that as a, consultant. And when I went into the podcast thing, which listeners have heard a million times, so I don't have to bring it up again, but there were a number of people that shot it down. It's way too altruistic. No one's going to care. You don't know how to run a business. This will never be successful. Even some good friends that said, one in particular that said, and he's a very good businessman, but he said, I look at this list of all these shows and they just are all about advocacy. You don't have anything in there about business. And, I've just had so many friends that go down this advocacy road and they don't have any money, and you should go back to the EHR thing and you should try to take over the market there and out, sort of oust another woman that's running a successful consulting firm. And I'm listening to him, and I know this is a lovely person, and he's just thinking with a business cap. And I was like, A, I'm not going to oust another female in business because I don't do that to my sisters. And B, I don't care about any of that. I mean, I did the EHR stuff to fund this, and I hope that we always have a long list of bleeding heart advocates. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what the point is. And my needs are small in terms of like housing and a car, and as long as it drives and is safe and all that stuff. So I'm not keeping up with any Joneses. I don't even know who the Joneses are. So, and it's so freeing to live that kind of a very simple life where it's my money. I made it. I can spend it on what the heck I want. And if I want to spend all of it on something extremely altruistic, that's my choice. When I'm dying, I'm going to be like, I did something good. Yay. Because I'm not taking the money with me,
Absolutely. I love that. In fact, reminds me of my son and I will go out on a deck and we'll sit there and drink a cup of coffee, and we'll have these deep conversations. It's really, really,
I love it.
Again, talk about blessing. And he was talking one day about, when he was still in school, he was a finance major, and he was talking about entrepreneurship and these entrepreneurs. And one of the topics we talked about was this entrepreneur was saying, it's okay to go out and make money, because once you have that money and security, or however you want to term it, then you can go and do all the philanthropic. I'm not even saying the word right.
I'll help you. I said anonymity. I couldn't say anonymity on live TV. So whatever, it happens. Don't edit this out, Joe.
Yeah. Thank you. And that wasn't my accent. That was just me not saying the word right. And so we had this whole conversation about it. And again, I go to the place of both and a lot. A good friend of mine taught me that some years ago. I'm like, yes, you can go and be of service without having the financial backing of your own. And that's fine, as long as that's where your heart is and that you're having the impacts that you were hoping to have for others. And you can also go and make money in business, do it with high integrity and caring, and bring love into it and so forth, and use that financial security, that capital to impact others. I love both options. And so I love that you followed your own heart, Kristen, to do what you know is going to have the impacts in this world. And I just think that's terrific.
Because then you're surrounded by other people that are just as altruistic and just as caring and all that. And they show me every day how, we have a newsletter that goes out. Listeners, we have a newsletter. I know people are sick of email, but if you want to keep up with like the last 7 days of shows that have been churned out, You can go to mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and you can see up at the top something about our newsletter. I don't even know what the amazing Dan Cropper did, but anyway, it's up there. And then every week it automatically posts the most recent 7 shows that anyone, not all of them, but just the most recent 7 shows of anyone that has done one in the last 7 days. And that just goes out every Thursday because, I mean, we're getting so many shows. We've got like 32 or something like that right now. And that newsletter is going to be pretty freaking stuffed, but I like it. I like it.
I love it.
So when we're talking about, things like healthcare and getting into I mean, to me, it seems obvious that, okay, you go into nursing and you have to have the compassion gene to do this, or a doctor or what have you. And we know that that's not always true for some people, and it's fine. It's just a job. But how do you see hospital systems and so on promoting the empathy piece and having people sort of come out of whatever's going on in their life and really connect, the ones that don't have that gene maybe, or they don't have those muscles developed yet?
I love that question. I'm thinking here because I can answer in a lot of different ways. One of the things I see a great deal is more and more focus on engaging physicians, engaging nurses, engaging staff throughout the healthcare system. So a couple things about that. One is we really can't engage anybody. People need to choose to engage or not. What we can do from a systems perspective is create the system which positions people to engage, positions people to understand their why. And you're right, some people are in healthcare because it's good money, or it's good benefits, or it's the only job in town for some of these smaller hospitals.
Right.
Others are there, and others are there because it's a calling. And so, again, I see a lot of times you see it's almost like a bumper sticker. Like, I'll give you an example that's a slight tangent. I hear and see a lot, patient and family-centered care, patient and family-centered care.
Right.
That's wonderful, except for when the family is maybe has a negative influence on that patient. And so what I talk about in that case, it's really about relationship-centered care. It's about us creating a system where we understand the family dynamic, that we can now connect with the family in an appropriate way, because maybe that, like we were talking about earlier, maybe that father or mother was abusive. Right. Well, do we really want to engage them in the care of the patient? Maybe not. And I would say, no, we want to understand that, because now that patient, just as we were talking about earlier, it's not just the physical manifestation of the illness, it's the mental and emotional and spiritual impacts and manifestations as well. So we need to actually understand that patient as a complex adaptive system, as a person, and the family dynamic. So again, a lot of times we go to these bumper stickers. It's all about patient and family-centered care. Well, let's be really clear on what that means, just as I just described. So in this case as well, when I think about how we can bring empathy into healing and compassion into healing, we need to connect with all these people throughout the entire healthcare system where they are. We need to fan their flame.
Yeah.
And so those that have the calling, I'll be honest, those who have the calling, that's easy.
Yes.
I can teach tactics. So many people can teach tactics, because they're there because their heart is there. Their soul is there. And they're marrying that with their mind and their brilliance and skills to care for others. That's easy. It's harder when we have people that aren't there because of that calling. Or quite frankly, nowadays, Kristen, as I'm sure you know, there's so much burnout. Yes. I mean, there is one physician per day in America is committing suicide. Mm-hmm. And we talked about suicide earlier. So so many nurses, my wife is a nurse, and so many of her friends are now leaving healthcare because they're so burnt out.
Yes.
And so we really need to, as healthcare leaders, do a much better job at creating a system that re-engages those people who are burning out. Give them, quite frankly, at the end of the day, we need to love them, because it is so much more than a job. when we're caring for people on their healing journey and when we're caring for people on their dying journey,
Oh my goodness,
we need to
yes.
exactly. We need to ensure that those people who are doing the caring, the health caring, that they're whole and healthy themselves and receiving the care they need. They're feeling the love that they should be feeling, so then they can give that to others. And I'll give you a very specific example. So my bride's father, Korean War vet, got ill back in December of 2016 or the fall of 2016. And he was at one of the most reputable healthcare systems in the Boston market. And he's there because of a medical error. Medical errors, in many cases, we can create, again, systems and checklists and all this. And Guandi, I get it. I love checklists. But people, if they're not engaged, if they're not cared for, if they're not feeling loved themselves, they will circumvent the checklist. They will circumvent every measure we put into place because they don't feel whole themselves. And we won't get into all the details on the whys behind it, but it happens. The data shows it happens. So he's at this hospital. The studies show that between 40 and 80 people enter a patient's room every 3 days in a healthcare system when you're inpatient.
Wow.
Now, even if half of that, even if it's 20, that's still a lot. So what was happening is people were entering his room, not saying who they were, not saying what they do, not telling him or the family how long something was going to take, whether something was going to hurt, not narrating the care, not explaining, not showing gratitude, not showing care. Again, maybe it's because that's who those people are, or maybe it's because they don't feel cared for themselves.
Yeah.
They don't feel loved themselves. So is there an excuse? No. I think you still need to do it, but I'm giving you understanding. There is understanding, and again, as leaders, we need to do something about that. Long story short, he ended up dying. In his last few, just as we talked about a little while ago, his last few weeks, his last few days, his last few hours, his last few moments on this earth were full of fear, were full of unknowing, were full of anger, because anxiety becomes anger very quickly. When we may not have been able to control whether he was going to live or die, but we can control how he dies. We can help people pass away in a peaceful way, feeling loved and cared for. And so there are lots of different methods and tactics, again, to bring empathy and compassion in. And it's when I hear, oh, yeah, we're going to develop this new care model, or we're going to create this new financial model. And I was a CFO. I get it. I love financial models.
Right.
That's not where the rubber meets the road. The rubber meets the road when our hearts connect to someone else's heart, and we can make a difference in someone's life, again, whether on a healing journey or a dying journey.
I love it. Oh, my gosh. Please tell our listeners the name of the book that's about this that you're talking about.
So that book is called From Heart to Head and Back Again, A Journey Through the Healthcare System. And as far as a quick update on that, it's received, in one of them from you, Kristen, phenomenal endorsements. And so I'm really thrilled with that. And I'm talking to a publisher now about actually having that published through them, and hopefully it will be out in the next X number of months. So that's where that's from. And so a lot of what I've learned is actually shared throughout my own story within that book, and then reflections back as a healthcare leader 15 years later. What's changed? What's improved? Where are those opportunities? How we can connect at that heart level? How we can reinstill empathy and compassion and help people find their own flames and fan them for themselves, and then make a difference for others. And
then the name of the book that you wrote about your son's journey with bullying and beyond.
That is the big kid in basketball. And I didn't start off writing a book. I was writing my heart was hurting.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share. And so I wrote it for myself. The first blog post, it wasn't a blog post. I was just basically journaling. And I went to my son and I said, Tommy, would you please read this? And then he did. And I said, what do you think? And he said, Daddy, I love it. And I said, are you okay if I share it to help others? And he said, please do. And that became a blog post series. And then it's funny, Kristen, just like you and I met through social media and so forth, not too long ago, I had shared the first chapter again in social media, and a friend of mine reshared it, and a friend of hers read it and commented and said something to the effect of that she had always wanted to coach, didn't know X's and O's, and neither did I when I started coaching, and simply wanted to help and make a difference in children's lives. And she basically said, this needs to get out there. So the bullying aspect is a very big theme throughout it. And our ability as adults to help children in general and through sports and so forth.
The bullying story, that's a piece of it.
Exactly. And so that was one of the contributors, one of the drivers where my bride and I said, yes, it's time to turn this into a book and get it out there and do it quickly. And that's why I'm just going to self-publish it and get it out there shortly.
You know, it's so funny because there's a long-standing joke. I know my ex-husband I've known longer than I haven't known him. So I met him when I was 18. And so it's been 30 years that we have known each other. And I read him some of your book. His eyesight is really not good. And so there's no way that he would have been able to read it. And I wasn't going to be emailing it out to people before you publish it, but I read him some of it last night and he goes, my God, one day I will shake the hand of the man that got you to read anything about sports. I was a little jealous, actually. He's like, I've tried for a year. Some guy you've never even met in person sends you a book and you read it. Oh, it's so funny. And then I have this thing with Stephen Kavalkovich, who does also another just such a compassionate. He was a former he's a former EMT, and he does the show on the network called Rescue the Rescuer. So we have this battle going on Facebook now. Who can make each other cry the most? Call our ugly tear cry by sending the most weepy YouTube video, movie clips, whatever we can. Who can like outdo each other? And he sends me all these sports ones this morning, and I'm like, that's interesting. I'm going to be interviewing or having conversation with Tom Dahlborg. So that's good timing.
That's awesome. I love that.
Well, tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can find out more about you.
So probably the best would be at my blog site, which is T Dahlborg. So I'll spell that out. So it's TDAHLBOR. I really try to pronounce the R there. .wordpress.com. I think most of my information is right there.
Yeah, and we're going to talk for a second after about an idea that I know you and I have been talking about co-hosting and you doing your own show, but I think this is how I work, is things just come up, and I have a different idea that we'll talk about after, and I'm teasing our listeners because I'm not going to share it while we're talking. It'll be shared later if it's something that we both agree on. But first, thank you for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you for the invite. When you've been such a blessing, I remember fondly being on the show prior, and then your endorsement of my first book, and then reading the second book just means the world to me. So I was absolutely thrilled to come on, and you just, as I said, you're this light that brings people together to help others. And what more can you ask for?
As are you and your bride and your kids and your dog.
Thank you very much.
All right. And I want to say thank you to our listening family on Mental Health News Radio.
But never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps. Or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you, though. After all, we promised we'd be cordial. Sometimes in you I can fight it.
Good boy. If you want to experience moments of joy, excitement, and satisfaction, visit the Honda Summer Spectacular event, where well-qualified buyers can get 1.9% APR on the 2018 Honda CR-V LX, part of KBB.com's 2018 Best Overall Brand. You've just entered car buying bliss.
See dealer for financing details based on 2018 branded matures from Kelley Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for information.
If you want to experience moments of joy, excitement, and satisfaction, visit the Honda Summer Spectacular event, where well-qualified buyers can get 1.9% APR on the 2018 Honda CR-V LX, part of KBB.com's 2018 Best Overall Brand. You've just entered car buying bliss.
See dealer for financing details based on 2018 branded matures from Kelley Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for information.